Tonight, we're setting aside the rush of the modern world and taking a slow journey through some of the strangest stories history has to offer. So wherever you are, get comfortable. Let your shoulders relax. Let the noise of the day begin to fade into the distance. The stories you're about to hear are all true, though many sound almost impossible to believe. You'll hear of meat falling from the sky, a war fought over a wooden bucket, an emperor who ruled a nation that never officially existed, and a mysterious plague that caused people to dance for days without stopping. You'll meet inventors, kings, rebels, dreamers, and ordinary people who found themselves caught in extraordinary events. Some of these stories changed the course of history. Others were nearly forgotten, but all of them reveal a simple truth. The past was often far stranger than fiction. So dim the light, settle in, and allow your mind to wander through centuries of forgotten mysteries, bizarre disasters, unusual wars, and remarkable lives. Tonight, we're exploring 50 bizarre history stories to fall asleep to. And now, our journey begins. Our first story takes us to a quiet spring day in Kentucky in the year 1876. Imagine stepping outside onto your farm, expecting nothing more unusual than a clear sky and a gentle breeze. Then suddenly, pieces of meat begin falling from above. Not one piece, not two, hundreds of pieces. According to multiple witnesses, chunks of meat drifted down over an area roughly the size of a football field. Some pieces were small, while others were reportedly several inches long. The event became known as the Kentucky Meat Shower. Naturally, people were baffled. Where had the meat come from? Some believed it was a sign from God. Others thought it might be evidence of some strange atmospheric phenomenon. A few brave, or perhaps foolish, individuals even tasted the mysterious substance. Scientists eventually examined samples and proposed a less supernatural explanation. One theory suggested that a flock of vultures had collectively regurgitated partially digested meat while flying overhead, creating the bizarre rain of flesh witnessed below. Whether that explanation is correct remains a matter of debate, but nearly 150 years later, the Kentucky Meat Shower remains one of the strangest events ever recorded in American history, and it serves as a reminder that sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the ones that actually happened. Our next story begins in medieval Italy, where rival city-states often competed for power, wealth, and influence. Wars were fought over territory, trade routes, and political alliances. But one conflict became famous for a far stranger reason: a bucket. In the year 1325, tensions between the cities of Bologna and Modena had already been simmering for years. Then, according to tradition, soldiers from Modena raided Bologna and returned home with an unusual prize: a wooden bucket taken from a city well. To modern ears, it sounds almost ridiculous. Surely no one would go to war over a bucket, but the bucket became a symbol of a much deeper rivalry between the two cities. Soon, thousands of soldiers were mobilized. Armies marched. Battles were fought. Lives were lost. And all the while, the stolen bucket remained a source of mockery and pride. Today, the conflict is remembered as the War of the Bucket. The original bucket, or at least one believed to be connected to the story, is still displayed in Modena. It serves as a reminder that history is often stranger than fiction. Because sometimes, behind great battles and political struggles, there is also a wooden bucket quietly waiting to become part of history. Our next story takes us to the city of Strasbourg in the summer of 1518. At first, it seemed like an ordinary day. Merchants opened their shops, workers went about their business, and life continued as it always had. Then something strange happened. According to historical accounts, a woman stepped into the street and began to dance. There was no music, no celebration, no obvious reason at all. Yet she continued dancing for hours, then for days. Soon, other people began to join her. What started with a single dancer grew into dozens, then hundreds. Before long, large groups of people were dancing throughout the city. Many appeared unable to stop. Witnesses reported that some dancers continued for days, despite exhaustion, dehydration, and injury. The situation became so alarming that local authorities searched desperately for an explanation. Physicians, religious leaders, and city officials all offered different theories. Some believed it was caused by illness. Others thought it might be divine punishment. No one truly knew. Eventually, the outbreak faded away as mysteriously as it had begun. More than 500 years later, historians still debate what really happened in Strasbourg during that strange summer. Whatever the answer may be, the dancing plague remains one of history's most unusual and enduring mysteries. Our next story begins with one of history's most famous inventors. Nikola Tesla helped pioneer many of the technologies that power the modern world. But late in his life, Tesla made an extraordinary claim. He said he had designed a weapon so powerful that it could destroy aircraft from hundreds of miles away. Newspapers called it the death beam. According to Tesla, the weapon would make nations impossible to invade and could potentially end war forever. The announcement captured headlines around the world. Some people believed Tesla had created a revolutionary breakthrough. Others thought the aging inventor was making impossible promises. Despite years of speculation, no working version of the weapon was ever publicly demonstrated. When Tesla died in 1943, rumors spread that government officials examined his papers, searching for evidence of the mysterious device. To this day, historians continue to debate whether the death beam was a genuine scientific concept, an unfinished project, or simply an ambitious dream. Whatever the truth may be, Tesla's death beam remains one of history's most enduring technological mysteries. Our next story begins in medieval France. Jacques de Molay was the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, one of the most powerful organizations in Europe. For years, the Templars had accumulated wealth, land, and influence. But in 1307, King Philip IV of France ordered the arrest of Templar members across the kingdom. They were accused of crimes ranging from heresy to corruption. After years of imprisonment and trials, Jacques de Molay was sentenced to death. In 1314, he was brought before a crowd and condemned to be burned at the stake. According to legend, as the flames rose around him, de Molay declared that both King Philip and Pope Clement V would soon answer before God's judgment. What happened next helped create one of history's most famous curses. Within a year, both the Pope and the King were dead. Whether it was coincidence or something more, people across Europe began whispering about the dying Templars' final words. More than 700 years later, the curse of Jacques de Molay remains one of history's most enduring legends. Our next story takes us to 19th century China. A young man named Xiuquan spent years studying for the imperial examinations, hoping to earn a government position. But after repeatedly failing the difficult tests, he suffered a severe emotional breakdown. During this period, Hong experienced a series of vivid visions. At first, he didn't fully understand them. Years later, after reading Christian religious texts, he came to a remarkable conclusion. Hong became convinced that he was the younger brother of Jesus Christ. Most people might have kept such a belief to themselves. Hong did not. Instead, he began preaching his message across China. To the surprise of many, thousands of people listened, then tens of thousands. Eventually, his movement grew into a massive rebellion known as the Taiping Rebellion. For more than a decade, armies fought across China in one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. millions of people lost their lives. Today, Xiuquan remains one of history's most unusual and influential figures, a man whose extraordinary belief helped change the course of a nation. Our next story begins with an emperor who ruled a country that wasn't truly his. In the 1860s, Maximilian of Austria was offered the crown of Mexico. Backed by the French Empire, he accepted and traveled across the Atlantic to begin his new reign. Maximilian believed he could bring stability and prosperity to the country, but the reality was very different. Many Mexicans refused to recognize him as their rightful emperor. As political tensions grew, support from France slowly disappeared. Without the protection of French troops, Maximilian found himself increasingly isolated. Eventually, Republican forces captured the emperor. Although many European leaders pleaded for mercy, the sentence remained unchanged. In 1867, Maximilian was executed by firing squad. His brief reign lasted only a few years. Today, he is remembered as one of history's most unusual monarchs, a European archduke who crossed an ocean to become Emperor of Mexico, only to lose both his throne and his life. Our next story takes us to Australia in the year 1932. After the First World War, many veterans were given farmland in Western Australia. But they soon faced an unexpected problem. Thousands of emus began migrating through the region. The large birds trampled crops, damaged fences, and caused widespread frustration for local farmers. With the situation growing worse, the Australian government made an unusual decision. It sent soldiers armed with machine guns to stop the birds. The operation sounded simple enough. Instead, the emus proved remarkably difficult to catch. They scattered in every direction, outran the soldiers, and quickly disappeared into the countryside. Despite several attempts, very few birds were eliminated. Before long, the military operation was called off. The emus had effectively won. Today, the event is remembered as the Great Emu War. It remains one of history's strangest military campaigns, proving that sometimes nature can be a far more challenging opponent than anyone expects. Our next story begins on the island of Borneo during the 1950s. Health officials were working to eliminate mosquitoes that spread malaria. To do this, they sprayed villages with a powerful insecticide. At first, the plan appeared to work. Mosquito numbers quickly declined. But before long, an unexpected chain of events began. The insecticide also poisoned many insects that local geckos relied upon for food. Cats hunted the weakened geckos and were poisoned as well. As the cat population disappeared, rats multiplied rapidly. The growing rat population threatened food supplies and increased the risk of disease. To solve the new problem, officials came up with an unusual solution. They loaded dozens of cats into aircraft and gently parachuted them into the affected villages. The operation became known as Operation Cat Drop. It remains one of history's most unusual examples of how solving one problem can sometimes create another, and how in this case, the solution quite literally fell from the sky. Our next story takes us to Boston in the year 1919. On a cold January afternoon, a massive steel storage tank stood quietly along the city's waterfront. Inside were more than 2 million gallons of molasses. Without warning, the enormous tank suddenly burst. Witnesses described hearing a deep rumble before a towering wave of molasses rushed through the streets. The thick syrup swept away buildings, wagons, and anything else in its path. Rescuers struggled to move through the sticky flood as they searched for survivors. When the cleanup was finally complete, investigators spent months trying to determine why the tank had failed. Some believed poor construction was to blame. Others pointed to the unusually warm weather that day. Today, the Great Molasses Flood remains one of the strangest industrial disasters in American history. A reminder that even something as ordinary as molasses can become the center of an extraordinary story. Our next story begins during the Second World War. While traveling through the Middle East, a group of Polish soldiers came across an orphaned Syrian brown bear cub. The tiny bear was adopted by the soldiers and given the name Wojtek. As he grew, Wojtek became an unlikely member of the unit. He traveled with the soldiers, shared their meals, and quickly became a beloved companion. According to those who served alongside him, Wojtek enjoyed wrestling with the men and was especially fond of fruit, honey, and even an occasional bottle of beer. When the unit was sent to Italy, military regulations prevented animals from officially joining the transport ships, so the soldiers found an unusual solution. They enlisted Wojtek as a private in the Polish army. During the Battle of Monte Cassino, Wojtek reportedly helped carry heavy crates of artillery shells to the front lines. Whether he fully understood his role or was simply copying the soldiers around him, no one can say. After the war, Wojtek spent the rest of his life in a zoo in Scotland, where many of his former comrades continued to visit him. Today, he remains one of the most remarkable and beloved animals in military history. Our next story takes us to Washington, D.C., during the final days of the American Civil War. President Abraham Lincoln had carried the weight of the nation through 4 difficult years of conflict. But only days before his assassination, he shared a dream that many would later find unsettling. According to those close to him, Lincoln dreamed he was walking through the White House. The halls were strangely quiet. Then he heard the sound of people crying. Following the voices, he entered a room where soldiers stood silently beside a covered body. Lincoln asked who had died. One of the guards answered, "The president." He awoke deeply disturbed by the dream. Only a short time later, on April 14, 1865, Lincoln was assassinated while attending a play at Ford's Theatre. Whether the dream was simply coincidence, a reflection of the enormous pressures he faced, or something more mysterious has been debated ever since. Today, it remains one of history's most famous and haunting premonitions. Our next story takes us to London in the year 1814. Inside a busy brewery stood enormous wooden vats, each holding hundreds of thousands of gallons of beer. For years, they had quietly towered above the workers below. Then, without warning, one of the giant iron hoops surrounding a vat suddenly failed. The enormous container burst apart. Its collapse triggered a chain reaction, causing several neighboring vats to rupture as well. In an instant, a massive wave of beer surged through the brewery and into the surrounding streets. Buildings were damaged as the flood rushed through one of London's poorest neighborhoods. The cleanup took days, and the unusual disaster quickly became famous throughout the city. Investigators later ruled the event an accident. Today, it remains one of the most unusual industrial disasters ever recorded, a reminder that history sometimes takes the most unexpected turns. Our next story takes us to the Austrian Empire in the year 1788. The Austrian army was preparing to face the Ottoman Empire during a military campaign in what is now Romania. One evening, a group of soldiers crossed a nearby river to scout the area. Instead of finding the enemy, they found merchants selling alcohol. After drinking late into the night, an argument broke out among the soldiers. Voices were raised. Then someone reportedly fired a shot. Hearing the commotion in the darkness, other units believed the Ottoman army had launched a surprise attack. Confusion quickly spread through the camp. Orders were shouted in different languages. Panic took hold. Before long, Austrian soldiers were firing at one another in the darkness, each believing they were under attack. By sunrise, the battlefield was filled with abandoned equipment and exhausted troops. The Ottoman army reportedly arrived days later to find the Austrian camp already deserted. Although historians continue to debate exactly how much of the story is true, the Battle of Karansebes remains one of history's most famous examples of military confusion. Sometimes, the greatest enemy is misunderstanding itself. Our next story begins shortly after one of Napoleon Bonaparte's greatest military victories. To celebrate, a grand rabbit hunt was organized for the French emperor. Thousands of rabbits were gathered and released into an open field. The organizers expected the frightened animals to scatter into the countryside. Instead, something completely unexpected happened. The rabbits rushed toward Napoleon and his hunting party. Wave after wave of rabbits charged across the field. Some climbed onto the horses, others surrounded the emperor's carriage. The startled hunters tried to chase them away, but the determined animals refused to retreat. The explanation turned out to be surprisingly simple. Many of the rabbits had been raised in captivity. Rather than seeing people as a threat, they associated them with feeding time. Instead of fleeing, they eagerly ran toward the nearest humans. The hunt quickly came to an end, and one of history's greatest military commanders found himself retreating before an army of rabbits. Today, the story remains one of the funniest and most unexpected moments associated with Napoleon Bonaparte. Our next story takes us to the Oregon coast in the year 1970. After a massive whale washed ashore, officials faced an unexpected problem. The animal weighed several tons, and no one was quite sure how to remove it. After considering several ideas, they settled on one that seemed reasonable at the time: explosives. The plan was simple. Use dynamite to break the whale into smaller pieces that scavenging birds could quickly carry away. Crowds gathered along the beach to watch. Then the explosives were detonated. Instead of disappearing, enormous pieces of the whale were launched high into the air. Blubber and debris rained down across the beach, damaging nearby cars and sending spectators running for cover. The cleanup proved far more difficult than anyone had expected. Today, the exploding whale has become one of the most famous and unusual engineering mistakes in American history. A reminder that even the best intentions can sometimes produce unforgettable results. Our next story takes us to the early years of the United States. Long before becoming the nation's 7th president, Andrew Jackson had earned a reputation for defending his honor. During his lifetime, he participated in numerous duels, a practice that was still accepted among many gentlemen of the time. One of the most famous took place in 1806. Jackson faced a skilled marksman named Charles Dickinson after a bitter personal dispute. When the duel began, Dickinson fired first. The bullet struck Jackson in the chest. Remarkably, he remained standing. Ignoring his injury, Jackson calmly raised his pistol, took careful aim, and returned fire. His shot proved fatal. The bullet that struck Jackson was never removed. It remained lodged near his heart for the rest of his life. Years later, despite carrying the wound, Andrew Jackson would become President of the United States. His remarkable resilience helped shape the image of one of America's most determined and controversial leaders. Our next story takes us to Paris at the end of the 19th century. Scientist Marie Curie spent years studying mysterious materials that emitted an invisible form of energy. Working alongside her husband, Pierre, she discovered 2 new elements: polonium and radium. At the time, no one fully understood the dangers of radiation. Marie handled radioactive materials with her bare hands and often carried small, glowing samples in her pockets because she found their soft blue light beautiful. Her discoveries transformed science and eventually earned her 2 Nobel Prizes. But they also came at a terrible cost. Years of exposure to radiation damaged her health, and in 1934, Marie Curie died from a disease linked to that exposure. Even today, more than a century later, many of her notebooks, laboratory journals, and pieces of equipment remain so radioactive that they are stored inside lead-lined containers. Researchers who wish to examine them must wear protective clothing. Even Marie Curie's coffin is lined with lead to safely contain the radiation that still lingers. It is a remarkable reminder that one woman's discoveries forever change science, and that their invisible power can still be measured more than 100 years later. Our next story takes us to the state of Georgia in the year 1969. Several years before becoming President of the United States, Jimmy Carter experienced something he could never fully explain. One evening, while waiting outside a meeting with several other people, Carter noticed a bright object in the sky. According to his account, the object appeared suddenly and glowed with unusual colors. It seemed to hover silently before changing brightness and moving away into the distance. Years later, Carter publicly described what he had seen. He never claimed it was an alien spacecraft. Instead, he simply admitted that he could not explain it. Astronomers have since suggested that the object may have been the planet Venus or an unusual atmospheric phenomenon. Others remain unconvinced. Whatever the explanation, Jimmy Carter's sighting remains one of the most well-known UFO reports ever made by a future president. A quiet mystery that still inspires curiosity more than half a century later. Our next story takes us to Rome in the year 897. It begins with one of the strangest trials in history. Pope Stephen VI ordered the body of his predecessor, Pope Formosus, to be dug up months after his death. The corpse was dressed once again in papal robes and placed on a throne inside a church. An official was appointed to answer questions on behalf of the dead pope as the trial began. Formosus was accused of unlawfully becoming pope and violating church law. The outcome was never really in doubt. He was declared guilty. His papal robes were removed. 3 fingers used for blessings were cut from his hand, and his body was eventually thrown into the Tiber River. The bizarre spectacle shocked many people in Rome. Public anger quickly turned against Pope Stephen VI. Before long, he was removed from power, imprisoned, and later died in captivity. Today, the Cadaver Synod, as it became known, remains one of the most extraordinary and unsettling episodes in the history of the medieval papacy, a reminder that truth can sometimes be stranger than fiction. Our next story takes us to the American frontier, long before Abraham Lincoln became president. As a young man, Lincoln worked on farms, split rails, and spent much of his time performing hard physical labor. He also developed a reputation for being remarkably strong. Neighbors challenged him to wrestling matches, where Lincoln quickly earned the respect of those around him. According to historical accounts, he competed in hundreds of matches and lost only one. His most famous contest came against Jack Armstrong, the leader of a local group known as the Clary's Grove Boys. The match drew a large crowd eager to see whether the tall newcomer could be defeated. After a hard-fought contest, Lincoln emerged victorious. His strength and honesty impressed even his opponents, who soon became his friends. Years later, Lincoln would lead the United States through one of its greatest challenges as president. But long before the White House, he had already earned another title, one of the toughest wrestlers on the American frontier. Our next story takes us to San Francisco during the 1850s. A businessman named Joshua Abraham Norton suffered a financial setback that cost him nearly everything. Soon afterward, he made an extraordinary announcement. He declared himself Emperor of the United States. Most people would have expected the city to laugh. Instead, something unexpected happened. The people of San Francisco embraced the idea. Shopkeepers welcomed him into their stores. Newspapers printed his proclamations. Even local businesses accepted currency issued in his name. Although he held no official power, Emperor Norton became one of the city's most beloved citizens. He issued imaginative decrees, proposed the construction of a bridge connecting San Francisco and Oakland decades before one was eventually built, and spent his days walking the city streets greeting the people. When Emperor Norton died in 1880, thousands of people attended his funeral. Today, he is remembered not for ruling an empire, but for reminding a city that kindness, imagination, and a little humor can leave a lasting legacy. Our next story begins in 1952. By then, Albert Einstein was already one of the most famous scientists in the world. His theories had transformed modern physics, and his name had become synonymous with genius. But after the death of Israel's first president, Chaim Weizmann, an extraordinary proposal was made. The government of Israel offered the presidency to Albert Einstein. Although the position was largely ceremonial, it was one of the highest honors the nation could bestow. Einstein was deeply moved by the offer. Yet after careful consideration, he politely declined. In a heartfelt letter, he explained that he lacked the natural ability and experience needed to govern people. Instead, he chose to continue his scientific work and quiet life of research. Today, the letter remains a remarkable reminder that even one of history's greatest minds recognized the importance of knowing his own strengths and limitations. Sometimes, the greatest wisdom is understanding which path is truly your own. Our next story takes us to the Netherlands during the 1630s. At the time, tulips were a new and exotic flower that had recently arrived from the Ottoman Empire. Their bright colors and unusual patterns quickly made them highly desirable. As demand grew, people began buying and selling tulip bulbs for ever-increasing prices. Before long, the flowers became the center of one of history's most famous financial crazes. Some rare tulip bulbs were reportedly worth as much as a comfortable house. Merchants, craftsmen, and investors all hoped to profit as prices continued to climb. But the excitement did not last forever. In 1637, confidence suddenly disappeared. Buyers stopped purchasing bulbs. Prices collapsed almost overnight. Many people who had hoped to become wealthy were left with tulips worth only a fraction of what they had paid. Today, Tulip Mania is remembered as one of the world's earliest speculative bubbles, a remarkable reminder that sometimes the greatest value exists only as long as people believe it does. Our next story takes us to a quiet English village during the 12th century. One day, villagers working in the fields near Woolpit discovered two frightened children wandering alone. At first glance, they seemed ordinary. But there was one remarkable difference. Their skin was green. The children spoke a language no one could understand. Their strange clothing was unlike anything the villagers had ever seen. Although they were offered bread, meat, and other foods, they refused to eat. For days, they survived only after discovering fresh beans growing in a nearby garden. Eventually, the young girl learned to speak English. She claimed that she and her brother had come from a mysterious place called St. Martin's Land. According to her, everyone there had green skin, and the sun never shone as brightly as it did in England. Over time, the girl's skin gradually lost its unusual color. Her brother, however, became ill and did not survive. To this day, historians continue to debate what really happened. Some believe the children suffered from a rare medical condition. Others suggest they were refugees from another community. Whatever the truth may be, the green children of Woolpit continue to remind us that the past still holds stories we may never fully explain. Our next story takes us to the Kingdom of Hungary during the late 16th century. Imagine arriving at a magnificent castle surrounded by forests and rolling hills. Its halls are filled with servants, noble guests, and flickering candlelight. From the outside, it appears to be the home of one of Europe's most powerful families. But according to legend, something far darker was hidden behind its stone walls. The castle belonged to Elizabeth Báthory, a Hungarian countess whose name would become one of the most infamous in history. Stories began spreading that young servant girls who entered the castle were never seen again. The most famous legend claimed that Elizabeth believed bathing in the blood of young women could preserve her youth and beauty. Whether that tale was true remains heavily debated by historians. What is well documented is that in 1610, investigators searched her castle after years of accusations and reports of missing girls. Witness testimony described horrific abuse, although historians continue to debate how much of the evidence was exaggerated by political rivals. Because Elizabeth was a member of the nobility, she was never publicly executed. Instead, She was confined inside her own castle. Workers sealed the doorway to her chamber with stone, leaving only a small opening through which food and water could be passed. There, she remained for nearly 4 years until her death in 1614. Whether Elizabeth Báthory was history's most prolific serial killer or the victim of political conspiracy may never be fully known. But her story has haunted Europe for more than 4 centuries, reminding us that the line between history and legend is sometimes surprisingly difficult to see. Our next story takes us to the year 1816, when people across Europe and North America began noticing something was terribly wrong with the weather. Imagine waking on a June morning, expecting the warmth of summer. Instead, frost covers the fields. Snow falls from the sky, and the air feels more like the middle of winter than the beginning of June. For farmers, it was a nightmare. Crops struggled to grow, harvests failed, and food became increasingly scarce. Many families were forced to leave their homes in search of better farmland, while others faced rising food prices and widespread hunger. People had no idea what had caused such a dramatic change. Some believed it was a punishment from God. Others feared the climate itself had permanently changed. The true cause, however, was taking place thousands of miles away. Just 1 year earlier, in April of 1815, Mount Tambora, a volcano in what is now Indonesia, erupted with extraordinary force. The explosion was one of the largest volcanic eruptions ever recorded. It blasted enormous amounts of ash and sulfur high into Earth's atmosphere, where they spread around the globe. The particles reflected sunlight back into space, cooling the planet and disrupting weather patterns for many months. The result became known as the Year Without a Summer. Even today, it remains one of history's most remarkable reminders that a single event in one corner of the world can quietly change life across the entire planet. Our next story takes us to London during the summer of 1858. Imagine walking along the banks of the River Thames on what should have been a warm summer afternoon. Instead of fresh air, you're met by a smell so overwhelming that it makes your eyes water. People cover their faces with handkerchiefs. Shopkeepers close their windows. Even breathing becomes difficult. At the time, the River Thames had become little more than an open sewer. For decades, untreated human waste, industrial pollution, and household garbage had been dumped directly into the river. Then came an unusually hot summer. As the water level dropped and temperatures climbed, the waste began to bake beneath the sun, producing an odor unlike anything the city had experienced before. The smell became so unbearable that newspapers called it the Great Stink. Members of Parliament, whose building stood beside the river, struggled to conduct debates. Curtains were soaked in chemicals in an attempt to block the odor, but even that offered little relief. For many years, scientists still believed diseases like cholera spread through foul-smelling air rather than contaminated water. Although they misunderstood the cause, the crisis finally convinced the government that something had to be done. Engineer Joseph Bazalgette designed an enormous underground sewer system that carried waste away from the city instead of into the Thames. Much of that remarkable network remains in use today. The Great Stink eventually faded into history, but it reminds us that sometimes it takes an unforgettable disaster before people decide to solve a problem that had been growing for generations. Our next story takes us to the city of Dublin, Ireland in the year 1875. Imagine walking through the busy streets on an ordinary summer afternoon. Horse-drawn wagons rattle over the cobblestones. Shopkeepers greet their customers. Children play in the narrow streets. Then, without warning, smoke begins rising into the sky. A fire has broken out inside one of the city's whiskey warehouses. At first, many people assume it will simply burn itself out. But as the flames spread, They reach thousands of wooden barrels filled with whiskey. The intense heat causes the barrels to burst one after another. Soon, rivers of burning whiskey begin flowing through the streets. Flames race along the gutters, setting nearby buildings alight as frightened residents rush to escape. Firefighters worked tirelessly to contain the blaze, while crowds gathered to watch the extraordinary scene unfold. Remarkably, despite the enormous fire, very few people died from the flames themselves. Instead, most of the victims were overcome after drinking large quantities of the whiskey flowing through the streets. In total, 13 people lost their lives from alcohol poisoning. The event became known as the Dublin Whiskey Fire. Even today, it remains one of history's strangest urban disasters. A reminder that sometimes the greatest danger isn't always the fire itself, but the unexpected choices people make in the middle of it. Our next story takes us to the city of Rome during the 1st century AD. Imagine standing along a marble road as senators, soldiers, and merchants pass beneath towering temples. At the center of the empire is a young emperor named Caligula. His reign would become one of the most infamous in Roman history. Among the many stories told about him, one has survived for nearly 2,000 years. It involves his favorite horse. The horse was named Incitatus, and according to ancient Roman writers, Caligula treated it more like royalty than an animal. Incitatus was said to sleep in a marble stable with an ivory manger. He wore jeweled decorations, fine purple blankets, and was cared for by servants whose only job was to attend to him. The most famous story claims that Caligula planned to make his horse a Roman consul, one of the highest political offices in the empire. Whether he truly intended to appoint Incitatus has been debated by historians ever since. Some believe the story was meant to show just how unstable the emperor had become. Others think it may have been an elaborate joke, mocking the Roman Senate by suggesting even a horse could perform their duties. Whatever Caligula's true intentions were, the story has endured for centuries, and it remains one of history's strangest reminders that truth and satire can become almost impossible to separate with the passage of time. Our next story takes us to the Mediterranean Sea in the year 75 BC. Imagine boarding a small Roman ship, expecting nothing more than a routine voyage across calm blue waters. The wind fills the sails. The shoreline slowly disappears behind you. Then, on the horizon, another ship appears. It isn't carrying merchants, it's carrying pirates. Long before he became Rome's most famous general, Julius Caesar was captured by a group of Cilician pirates while traveling through the eastern Mediterranean. The pirates demanded a ransom of 20 talents of silver for his release. According to ancient historians, Caesar laughed at the amount. He insisted they should ask for 50 talents instead, claiming he was worth far more than they realized. While his companions gathered the ransom, Caesar spent nearly 40 days living among the pirates. He joked with them, joined in their games, and even read his speeches and poems aloud. When they failed to applaud, he reportedly called them uncultured barbarians. He also made an unusual promise. More than once, Caesar told the pirates that once he was free, he would return and have every one of them crucified. The pirates laughed. They believed the young Roman was joking. But after the ransom was paid and Caesar regained his freedom, he immediately raised a small fleet of ships. He tracked the pirates down, captured them, and carried out exactly what he had promised. It is one of the earliest stories that reveals the confidence and determination that would eventually help Julius Caesar rise to become one of history's most famous leaders. And it reminds us that sometimes the most unbelievable promises are the ones people should take most seriously. Our next story takes us to the town of Courtrai in what is now Belgium during the summer of 1302. Imagine standing just outside the city walls as thousands of armored knights gather across the fields. Their polished armor glitters beneath the morning sun. War horses stamp impatiently against the ground. Most people believe the battle was already decided, After all, medieval knights were considered nearly unstoppable. They were the elite warriors of Europe, protected by heavy armor and backed by generations of military tradition. Facing them was an army made up largely of ordinary townspeople. Many were weavers, craftsmen, merchants, and farmers. Few had the wealth or status of the noble knights preparing to charge. When the battle began, the French cavalry thundered forward. But the Flemish defenders had carefully chosen their ground. Marshy fields, ditches, and uneven terrain slowed the charging horses before they could build their full momentum. As the knights struggled through the difficult ground, the infantry stood their ground with long spears and sturdy polearms. One charge after another was repelled. By the end of the day, the impossible had happened. The army of ordinary citizens had defeated one of the most powerful knightly forces in Europe. The battle became known as the Battle of the Golden Spurs, named after the hundreds of golden riding spurs collected from the fallen French knights after the fighting had ended. Today, historians see the battle as an important turning point in medieval warfare. It showed that discipline, preparation, and clever tactics could sometimes overcome even the most powerful armies. And it serves as a reminder that history is often shaped not only by kings and nobles, but by ordinary people who refuse to back down. Our next story takes us to the border between Greece and Bulgaria in the autumn of 1925. Imagine standing beside a quiet military checkpoint, nestled among rolling hills. The border is calm. Soldiers on both sides go about their daily routines, watching one another from a distance. For the moment, everything is peaceful. Then, a stray dog appears. Without a care in the world, it wanders across the border. One of the Greek soldiers chases after it. Exactly what happened next remains a matter of historical debate. Some accounts say Bulgarian guards mistakenly believed the soldier was attempting to cross the frontier. Others suggest confusion and rising tensions quickly led to gunfire. Whatever the cause, the Greek soldier was killed. News of the incident spread rapidly. Believing the shooting had been an act of aggression, Greece responded by sending troops across the border into Bulgaria. For several days, the two countries exchanged gunfire as the situation threatened to grow into a much larger conflict. Fortunately, the fighting did not last long. The newly formed League of Nations stepped in and called for an immediate ceasefire. After investigating the incident, the League ordered Greece to withdraw its forces and pay compensation to Bulgaria. The brief conflict soon came to an end. Because the events began after a soldier chased a wandering dog across the frontier, the episode became known as the War of the Stray Dog. Today it stands as one of history's strangest international incidents, and it reminds us that sometimes even the smallest misunderstandings can have unexpectedly enormous consequences. Our next story takes us to the Korean Demilitarized Zone, better known as the DMZ, in the summer of 1976. Imagine standing at one of the most heavily guarded borders in the world. On one side are United Nations soldiers. On the other are North Korean guards. Between them lies a narrow strip of land where even the smallest misunderstanding can become dangerously serious. Nearby stands a large poplar tree. At first glance, it seems completely ordinary, but its thick branches have grown so wide that they block the view between two United Nations checkpoints. To solve the problem, a small work party is sent to trim the tree. Armed with ladders, ropes, and axes, the men begin cutting away the overgrown branches. Moments later, North Korean soldiers approach. They insist the tree should not be touched. An argument begins. Within minutes, the confrontation turns violent. Two United States Army officers, Captain Arthur Boniface and First Lieutenant Mark Barrett, are killed during the attack. The incident shocks the world. For several tense days, many fear the violence could grow into another war on the Korean peninsula. Instead of backing down, the United States and South Korea prepare an extraordinary response. The operation is given an unusual name, Operation Paul Bunyan. A few days later, engineers return to the same tree. This time, they are protected by hundreds of soldiers, tanks, attack helicopters, fighter aircraft, and even American B-52 bombers circling overhead. It becomes one of the largest military shows of force ever assembled for the simple task of cutting down a single tree. The chainsaws begin their work. Within minutes, the poplar tree is reduced to a stump. Remarkably, despite the enormous military buildup, not another shot is fired. The operation ends peacefully, and both sides gradually step back from the brink of a much larger conflict. Today, the poplar tree incident remains one of the Cold War's most extraordinary moments. A reminder that, in places where tensions run high, even the simple act of trimming a tree can bring the world frighteningly close to war. Our next story takes us to the island of Zanzibar, off the eastern coast of Africa, on the morning of August 27, 1896. Imagine waking to the sound of waves gently rolling onto the shore. The harbor is calm. Merchant ships rest quietly at anchor. The streets are only just beginning to fill with people starting another ordinary day. But before the morning is over, history will witness the shortest war ever recorded. Just days earlier, the Sultan of Zanzibar had died. When a new ruler named Khalid bin Bargash took control of the palace without British approval, tensions quickly rose. The British government demanded that he step down immediately. Khalid refused. Soon, British warships sailed into Zanzibar's harbor. Their cannons were aimed directly at the Sultan's palace. An ultimatum was delivered. If Khalid did not surrender by 9 a.m., military action would begin. As the final minutes passed, everyone waited. 9 o'clock arrived. The palace flag remained flying. Within moments, the British fleet opened fire. Shells struck the wooden palace, setting parts of the building ablaze. The Sultan's forces attempted to return fire, but they were hopelessly outmatched by the powerful warships anchored offshore. Just 38 minutes later, the palace had been heavily damaged. The Sultan had fled, and the fighting was over. Although the exact duration is sometimes listed as between 38 and 45 minutes, it is widely remembered as the shortest war in recorded history. Today, the Anglo-Zanzibar War remains one of history's most remarkable examples of how quickly an international conflict can begin and end. Our next story takes us to Europe during the height of the Second World War. Imagine finding yourself inside a prisoner of war camp. Tall, barbed wire fences surround the compound. Guard towers watch every movement. Escape seems almost impossible. The days pass slowly, and simple comforts become incredibly valuable. One of those comforts was a familiar board game, Monopoly. To most people, it was simply a game about buying streets, collecting rent, and building hotels. But during the war, certain Monopoly games hid a remarkable secret. The British Intelligence Service worked with John Waddington Limited, the company that produced Monopoly in the United Kingdom, to create special editions for prisoners of war. From the outside, the boxes looked completely ordinary. Inside, however, they concealed carefully hidden escape tools. Silk maps that wouldn't tear if they became wet. Real currency from occupied countries. Tiny compasses hidden inside playing pieces. And other survival items designed to help prisoners escape after leaving the camp. The specially prepared games were secretly delivered through charitable organizations that regularly sent care packages to Allied prisoners. German guards, seeing nothing more than a popular board game, often allowed the packages to pass without suspicion. Not every Monopoly game contained these hidden supplies. Only carefully marked editions intended for specific prisoner of war camps carried the concealed escape equipment. Exactly how many successful escapes were aided by these remarkable games remains unknown. Much of the operation stayed classified for many years after the war. Today, the Monopoly escape kits are remembered as one of the most ingenious deception operations of the Second World War. A reminder that sometimes the greatest tools for survival can be hidden in the most ordinary places. Our next story takes us to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, on the evening of October 14, 1912. Imagine standing outside a crowded auditorium as people gather to hear one of America's most famous politicians speak. Campaign banners flutter in the cool autumn air. Supporters eagerly wait for his arrival. Then, Just as Theodore Roosevelt steps from his car, a man pushes through the crowd. A gunshot echoes down the street. The bullet strikes Roosevelt in the chest. Panic spreads through the crowd. Many assume the former president has been mortally wounded. But Roosevelt doesn't fall. Instead, he calmly places his hand inside his coat and discovers that the bullet has first passed through two unexpected obstacles: a folded 50-page speech and a thick steel eyeglass case. Together, they had slowed the bullet just enough to keep it from reaching his lungs. After briefly coughing to make sure he wasn't bleeding internally, Roosevelt made an extraordinary decision. Rather than going straight to the hospital, he insisted on delivering the speech he had spent weeks preparing. Standing before the audience, he began with words that would soon become famous. "It takes more than that to kill a bull moose." For nearly 90 minutes, he continued speaking, despite the bullet still being lodged inside his chest. Only after finishing his address did he allow doctors to examine his wound. Because removing the bullet posed greater risks than leaving it in place, physicians decided not to operate. Remarkably, Roosevelt carried the bullet with him for the rest of his life. Today, the attempted assassination remains one of the most astonishing moments in American political history. A reminder that sometimes determination can be just as extraordinary as history itself. Our next story takes us to Berlin, Germany, during the final days of the Second World War in April 1945. Imagine descending into a reinforced underground bunker deep beneath the streets of the city. Above, artillery echoes in the distance. Buildings shake with every explosion. The once powerful German capital is slowly being surrounded. Inside the bunker, however, life continues in an uneasy silence. Messengers come and go. Military officers study maps. And meals are still served at the usual times. Adolf Hitler had followed a largely vegetarian diet during the later years of his life. On the afternoon of April 30th, 1945, witnesses reported that his final meal was a simple serving of pasta with tomato sauce. There was no grand banquet, no elaborate celebration, just an ordinary meal served in extraordinary circumstances. Shortly afterward, Hitler met privately with several members of his staff. He thanked them for their loyalty and quietly said his farewells. Later that afternoon, he and his wife, Eva Braun, retreated to a private room inside the bunker. A short time later, both were dead. Following Hitler's earlier instructions, their bodies were carried outside into the garden of the Reich Chancellery, where they were covered with gasoline and burned to prevent them from being displayed by advancing Soviet forces. Within days, Berlin surrendered. Soon afterward, Germany's unconditional surrender brought the war in Europe to an end. Today, Hitler's final meal is remembered not because of what was served, but because it marked the final ordinary moment before one of history's most significant chapters came to a close. It is a quiet reminder that even history's most consequential events are often preceded by moments that appear remarkably ordinary. Our next story takes us to Japan during the closing days of the Second World War in August of 1945. Imagine finishing a long day of work in the city of Hiroshima. The morning sky is clear. People are heading to work. Streetcars move quietly through the city. Everything seems perfectly ordinary. Among the workers preparing to return home is an engineer named Tsutomu Yamaguchi. He had traveled to Hiroshima on a business trip and was preparing to leave the city the following day. Then, at 8:15 on the morning of August 6th, history changed forever. A blinding flash lit up the sky. Moments later, the world's first wartime atomic bomb exploded over the city. Yamaguchi survived the blast, though he suffered serious burns and other injuries. Despite what had happened, he managed to find transportation and began the difficult journey back to his hometown. That hometown was Nagasaki. Just 3 days later, while reporting what he had witnessed to his supervisor, another brilliant flash suddenly filled the sky. A second atomic bomb exploded over the city. Remarkably, Tsutomu Yamaguchi survived once again. He became the only person officially recognized by the Japanese government as having survived both atomic bombings. In the years that followed, Yamaguchi dedicated much of his life to speaking about the devastating human cost of nuclear weapons. He lived until 2010, sharing his experiences in the hope that future generations would never witness such destruction again. Today, his story remains one of history's most extraordinary tales of survival, a reminder that even in humanity's darkest moments, the strength to endure can sometimes seem almost impossible to believe. Our next story takes us to Mexico City on the afternoon of June 22, 1986. Imagine sitting among thousands of spectators inside a packed football stadium. The crowd is alive with anticipation. Flags wave through the air. The noise echoes across the field as two longtime rivals prepare to face one another. On one side is Argentina. On the other is England. Just 4 years earlier, the two nations had fought the Falklands War, and emotions remained strong on both sides. The match was tied as the second half began. Then came one of the most famous moments in the history of sports. An Argentine forward named Diego Maradona sprinted toward a loose ball as England's goalkeeper rushed forward to catch it. Both players leaped into the air. The ball glanced into the net. The referee awarded the goal. England's players immediately protested. They believed Maradona had struck the ball with his hand rather than his head, but without the benefit of modern video replay, the officials allowed the goal to stand. After the match, Maradona famously joked that the goal had been scored a little with the head of Maradona and a little with the hand of God. The phrase quickly became known around the world. Just a few minutes later, Maradona scored another goal. This time, there was no controversy. He dribbled past 5 English players before calmly putting the ball into the net. Many still consider it one of the greatest goals ever scored. Together, the two moments transformed an already memorable match into one of the most famous sporting events in history. Today, the hand of God remains one of football's most debated goals, a reminder that sometimes a single split-second decision can become part of history for generations to come. Our next story takes us to Europe during the height of the great witch hunts between the 15th and 17th centuries. Imagine living in a small village where nearly everyone knows one another. The seasons determine whether families have enough food to survive. A failed harvest can bring hunger. A sudden illness can claim an entire household. Without modern medicine or scientific explanations, many people searched for answers wherever they could find them. Sometimes those answers came in the form of witchcraft. Across much of Europe, a growing belief took hold that certain individuals had made pacts with the devil, granting them the power to cause disease, destroy crops, poison livestock, and bring misfortune upon entire communities. Fear spread from village to village, fueled by rumors, religious conflict, and uncertainty. Contrary to what many people believe, the largest witch hunts did not occur during the Middle Ages. Most took place much later, between the late 15th century and the 17th century, during a period of tremendous political and religious upheaval across Europe. As accusations increased, neighbors began turning against neighbors. A personal dispute, an unexpected tragedy, or even a failed harvest could sometimes be enough to place someone under suspicion. Once accused, proving innocence was often extremely difficult. Trials varied from region to region. Some courts required evidence and testimony, while others relied heavily on confessions that had been extracted under torture. Fear often spread faster than reason, creating waves of accusations that could engulf entire communities. Historians estimate that between 40,000 and 60,000 people were executed for witchcraft across Europe. Although men were also accused, roughly 3/4 of those executed were women. Over time, attitudes slowly began to change. Judges became increasingly skeptical of unreliable testimony. Scholars questioned long-held beliefs about witchcraft, and advances in science offered natural explanations for many events that had once been blamed on supernatural forces. Gradually, the great European witch hunts came to an end. Today, they remain one of history's most sobering examples of how fear, misinformation, and suspicion can influence entire societies. A quiet reminder that extraordinary claims, when accepted without evidence, can sometimes have extraordinary consequences. Our next story takes us to the small village of Salem, Massachusetts, in the spring of 1692. Imagine waking in a quiet colonial settlement surrounded by dense forests. Wooden homes line muddy streets. Church bells mark the passing of each day, and nearly every aspect of life revolves around faith and the close-knit community. It is a place where everyone knows one another, and where rumors can spread almost as quickly as the wind. Then, without warning, several young girls begin behaving in ways no one can explain. They scream without reason, fall to the ground in violent fits, and claim they are being tormented by invisible forces. Ministers and local officials search for answers, but with no clear medical explanation available, many conclude that witchcraft must be responsible. Before long, accusations begin. At first, only a handful of people are suspected, but fear quickly grows. Friends accuse friends. Neighbors testify against neighbors. Even respected members of the community find themselves under suspicion. The courts accepted a controversial form of testimony known as spectral evidence, in which witnesses claimed that a person's spirit had appeared to them in dreams or visions. Although impossible to verify, these claims were often treated as credible evidence during the trials. Over the course of the next several months, more than 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft. 19 were convicted and executed by hanging. One man died after refusing to enter a plea. Several others died while awaiting trial in prison. Eventually, doubts about the proceedings began to grow. Religious leaders questioned the use of spectral evidence, and colonial officials became increasingly concerned that innocent people were being condemned. By early 1693, the trials were brought to an end. In the years that followed, many of those involved publicly admitted the trials had been a terrible mistake. Some jurors apologized for their decisions, and the colony later offered compensation to several of the victims' families. Today, the Salem witch trials remain one of the most famous episodes of mass hysteria in American history. A quiet reminder that fear, when allowed to replace evidence, can lead ordinary communities to make extraordinary mistakes. Our next story takes us back to Salem, Massachusetts, during the autumn of 1692. Imagine being an elderly farmer after a lifetime of hard work. Your fields have been tended for decades, your family has grown, and your land represents everything you've spent a lifetime building. At 81 years old, you hope to live out your remaining years in peace. Instead, your name appears among those accused of witchcraft. Giles Corey was a respected landowner in Salem when the witch trials reached their height. Like many others, he found himself caught in a growing wave of fear and suspicion. Accusers claimed he had practiced witchcraft, despite there being no physical evidence to support the allegations. When Corey was brought before the court, he made an extraordinary decision. Rather than pleading guilty or innocent, he refused to enter any plea at all. Under English law at the time, a trial could not proceed unless the accused entered a plea. To force one, authorities turned to an ancient legal punishment known as peine forte et dure, or strong and hard punishment. Corey was laid on the ground, and a wooden board was placed across his chest. One by one, heavy stones were added. The weight increased hour after hour as officials repeatedly demanded that he enter a plea. According to tradition, Corey refused every request. Instead, he answered with just 2 words: more weight. After 2 days of relentless pressure, Giles Corey died without ever entering a plea. Historians believe his decision may have been deliberate. Had he been convicted of witchcraft, his property could have been confiscated by the colonial government. By refusing to plead, Corey prevented a conviction, allowing his land to remain with his family instead. His death shocked many people, even at the time. Only a few days later, several more executions took place, but growing public unease continued to build. Within weeks, support for the trials began to collapse, helping bring the Salem witch trials to an end. Today, Giles Corey is remembered as one of the most remarkable figures of the Salem witch trials. His final act became a symbol of courage, determination, and resistance in the face of overwhelming injustice. A quiet reminder that even when everything else is taken away, a person can still choose how they face history. Our next story takes us back to Mexico City on the afternoon of June 22, 1986. Imagine sitting among more than 100,000 spectators inside the Azteca Stadium. Only minutes earlier, Diego Maradona had scored the controversial Hand of God goal. England's players were still frustrated, and the crowd was still buzzing. Few realized they were about to witness another moment that would make history. With Argentina leading, Maradona received the ball just inside his own half. One defender stepped forward. He slipped past him. Then another. Keeping the ball remarkably close to his feet, Maradona sprinted more than 60 meters through the England defense, weaving past 5 players before facing goalkeeper Peter Shilton. As Shilton rushed forward, Maradona calmly moved around him and rolled the ball into the open net. The stadium erupted. Even those who had just condemned his previous goal could hardly deny the brilliance of this one. Years later, FIFA asked football fans around the world to vote for the greatest goal in World Cup history. Maradona's incredible solo run was chosen as the goal of the century. What makes the story so remarkable is that it happened only minutes after one of football's most controversial goals. In a single match, Maradona created 2 moments that would be remembered forever, one for its controversy, the other for its extraordinary skill. Today, the goal of the century remains one of the greatest individual plays ever seen in sport. A quiet reminder that sometimes true greatness lasts only a few seconds, yet is remembered for generations. Imagine a nation filled with excitement as the FIFA World Cup begins. Across Colombia, streets are decorated with flags, televisions fill with eager fans, and millions believe their national team has a genuine chance to compete for the championship. After years of impressive performances, expectations have never been higher. Among the team's most respected players is defender Andrés Escobar. Known for his calm demeanor, sportsmanship, and leadership, Escobar had earned admirations both on and off the field. Teammates and fans alike viewed him as one of Colombia's brightest stars. Then came a match against the United States. Early in the game, an American cross was played into Colombia's penalty area. Escobar stretched to intercept the ball, hoping to clear the danger. Instead, it deflected into his own net. The own goal gave the United States an early lead. Colombia eventually lost the match and was eliminated from the tournament, ending what many had hoped would be a historic World Cup run. For most athletes, an unfortunate mistake is simply part of competition. But in Colombia during the 1990s, the situation was far more complicated. The country was struggling with violence, fueled by powerful drug cartels and organized crime. Enormous sums of money had been wagered on football matches, and emotions surrounding the World Cup ran dangerously high. Just days after returning home, Escobar visited friends at a local restaurant in Medellin. As he left the restaurant during the early hours of July 2, 1994, he became involved in an argument in the parking lot. The confrontation turned deadly. Andrés Escobar was shot and killed at just 27 years old. His death shocked the sporting world. More than 100,000 people attended his funeral, while millions more mourned across Colombia and around the world. For many, his tragic death became a symbol of the devastating consequences of allowing violence and hatred to overshadow sport. Today, Andrés Escobar is remembered not for a single own goal, but for his integrity, humility, and sportsmanship. A quiet reminder that behind every athlete is a human being, and that some moments in history are remembered not for the game itself, but for the lessons they leave behind. Our next story takes us to London, England, in the spring of 1966. Imagine walking through a museum where one of the world's most valuable sporting trophies is on public display. Visitors quietly admire the golden prize that every football nation dreams of lifting. Security seems sufficient, and few people imagine anyone would dare steal such a famous object. Then, one ordinary Sunday morning, it disappears. The Jules Rimet trophy, awarded to the winners of the FIFA World Cup, had been stolen from its display case. Police immediately launched a nationwide investigation, interviewing witnesses and searching for clues, but the trophy had seemingly vanished without a trace. News of the theft quickly spread around the world. With England preparing to host the 1966 FIFA World Cup just months later, officials feared the trophy might never be recovered. Then, only a week after the theft, an unexpected hero entered the story. A man named David Corbett was taking his dog, Pickles, for an evening walk through a quiet neighborhood in South London. As Pickles sniffed along a garden hedge, he suddenly stopped beside a small package wrapped in newspaper. Curious, Corbett picked it up. Inside was the missing World Cup trophy. Against all odds, one ordinary dog had stumbled across one of the most famous missing objects in the world. Pickles quickly became an international celebrity. Newspapers across Britain celebrated the unlikely discovery, and the faithful collie even attended public events and received his own medal for helping recover the trophy. England would go on to win the 1966 World Cup later that year, with Captain Bobby Moore lifting the very trophy that had nearly been lost forever. Although the original Jules Rimet trophy was stolen again in Brazil in 1983 and has never been recovered, the story of Pickles remains one of football's most charming and unlikely moments. Today, it serves as a quiet reminder that history's greatest discoveries sometimes come from the most unexpected heroes. Our next story takes us to the state of Illinois on the evening of May 9th, 1994. Imagine standing outside a prison as the sun slowly disappears below the horizon. Reporters gather behind barricades, television cameras point toward the prison gates, and people wait quietly for news. Inside, one of America's most notorious serial killers is spending the final hours of his life. As the evening unfolds, prison staff prepare one final meal. Many people assume that those facing execution request extravagant feasts or unusual delicacies. In reality, the meals are often surprisingly ordinary. John Wayne Gacy requested a meal that reflected his past employment as the manager of several Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurants. His final meal reportedly included a bucket of original recipe fried chicken, French fries, fresh strawberries, and a dozen fried shrimp. It was a simple order. Nothing about the meal hinted at the crimes that had made his name infamous. During the 1970s, Gacy murdered at least 33 young men and boys, burying many of his victims beneath his suburban home near Chicago. His crimes shocked the nation and remain among the most notorious serial murder cases in American history. Shortly after midnight on May 10, 1994, Gacy was executed by lethal injection. His execution marked the end of a case that had haunted investigators and the families of victims for nearly 2 decades. Stories about the final meals of condemned prisoners often capture public attention because they offer one last glimpse into an individual's final hours. Yet historians and criminologists frequently note that the meal itself is rarely the most important part of the story. Instead, it is the lives of the victims that deserve to be remembered. Today, John Wayne Gacy's final meal is remembered not because of what was served, but because it marked the closing chapter of one of America's darkest criminal cases. A quiet reminder that history is measured not by the final meal someone eats, but by the lives they leave behind. Our next story takes us to Berlin, Germany, on the evening of July 9th, 2006. Imagine sitting inside a packed Olympic stadium as two of football's greatest nations, France and Italy, prepare to decide the FIFA World Cup final. For French captain Zinedine Zidane, it is an especially significant night. As the minutes slowly tick away, the world expects the legendary midfielder to finish his remarkable career with one final masterful performance. Instead, history takes an unexpected turn. While jogging up the field, Zidane exchanges words with Italian defender Marco Materazzi. The two continue talking for several moments before Zidane suddenly stops, turns around and walks back toward him. Then, without warning, he drives his head into Materazzi's chest. The stadium falls silent. Materazzi collapses to the ground as players from both teams rush toward the scene. At first, the referee appears uncertain about what happened. After consulting with his assistants, Zidane is shown a red card. The French captain slowly removes his armband and walks past the World Cup trophy on his way off the field. It is the final image of his extraordinary playing career. France would go on to lose the match in a penalty shootout, giving Italy its 4th World Cup title. In the years that followed, many questions surrounded the incident. Materazzi later acknowledged that he had insulted Zidane's sister, while Zidane admitted he regretted his reaction, even though he felt deeply provoked. Today, the headbutt remains one of the most unforgettable moments in football history. It is remembered not because of the collision itself, but because it transformed the final moments of one of the sport's greatest careers into one of its most surprising endings. A quiet reminder that even legends can sometimes allow a single moment to define history. Our next story takes us to Florida on the evening of January 23rd, 1989. Imagine standing outside a prison long after the sun has set. Television crews line the roads leading to the entrance. Reporters speak quietly into their microphones while small groups of protesters and onlookers wait behind barricades. Inside, one of America's most infamous serial killers is spending his final hours. As midnight approaches, prison staff offer him one final meal. Ted Bundy declined to make a special request. Following prison policy, he was served the standard meal provided to inmates. It consisted of steak, eggs, hash browns, toast with butter and jelly, milk, coffee, and juice. According to prison officials, Bundy ate very little of it. Over the previous decade, Bundy had confessed to murdering numerous young women across several states, though investigators believe the true number of victims may never be known. His crimes shocked the United States and made him one of the country's most notorious serial killers. Shortly before dawn on January 24th, Bundy was escorted to Florida's execution chamber. Outside the prison, hundreds of people had gathered throughout the night. Some held signs honoring the victims, while others waited simply to witness the conclusion of a case that had dominated headlines for years. Just after sunrise, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair. His death marked the end of one of the largest and most widely followed criminal investigations in American history. Today, Ted Bundy's last meal is remembered not because of what was served, but because it marked the final chapter of a case that forever changed countless lives. A quiet reminder that history is best measured not by the final moments of those who caused suffering, but by remembering the innocent people whose lives were taken far too soon. Our final story takes us to medieval England in the spring of 1095. Imagine standing outside on a cool April evening as darkness settles over the countryside. The only light comes from the moon and countless stars scattered across the sky. For people living in medieval Europe, the heavens were believed to carry messages from God. Then, without warning, the stars begin to fall. Not one or two, but hundreds, then thousands. Brilliant streaks of light race across the sky in every direction. Across England and much of Europe, people stop what they are doing and stare upward in amazement. In an age when comets, eclipses, and unusual events were often seen as divine signs, countless witnesses believe they are watching an omen of great change. Among those alive to witness the extraordinary display is a young prince named Henry, the youngest son of William the Conqueror. At the time, few expected Henry to become king. His older brothers stood ahead of him in the line of succession, and his future seemed uncertain. Yet history had other plans. Only a few years after the great meteor storm, Henry unexpectedly claimed the English throne and became King Henry I. As his reign unfolded, Many medieval chroniclers looked back to the night of the falling stars. To them, the extraordinary display had not been a coincidence. They believed the heavens had foretold the rise of a king whose reign would leave a lasting mark on England. Henry strengthened the royal government, expanded the kingdom's legal system, and issued the Charter of Liberties, an important document that promised limits on royal power and influenced later generations. Of course, modern historians do not believe the meteor storm predicted Henry's future. It was simply one of nature's most spectacular displays. But for those who watched thousands of stars streak across the sky in 1095, it must have seemed impossible not to connect that unforgettable night with the remarkable king who followed. And perhaps that is why the great meteor storm has never been forgotten. And so, our journey comes to an end. Tonight, we've wandered through forgotten kingdoms, mysterious villages, unlikely emperors, remarkable discoveries, curious animals, and events that seem almost impossible to believe. Each story is a reminder that history is far more than dates and names. It is filled with strange coincidences, remarkable people, and mysteries that continue to puzzle us centuries later. Perhaps somewhere, hidden within old libraries, weathered journals, or forgotten ruins, there are countless more stories still waiting to be discovered. But those can wait for another night. For now, let your thoughts drift gently into the quiet. Allow the stories to fade like distant echoes from another time. Thank you for spending this journey with me. If you enjoyed these stories, there are many more waiting for you here on the channel whenever you're ready to explore again. Until next time, sleep well.